The Gardens and Chapel of Santa Tecla la Vella. The Gardens of Santa Tecla are located on the site where 2,000 years ago stood the imperial cult enclosure, dominated by the Temple of Augustus. It is understood that in the 6th century, during the Visigothic period, the northern sector of the imperial cult enclosure was transformed into an episcopal site, hosting the cathedral, the baptistry, the cemetery, and the bishop's palace. After the Islamic era, and with the Christian restoration of the city in the 12th century, the space became a cemetery in the shadow of the medieval cathedral. The chapel is understood to date from the mid-13th century. It was dedicated to St. Tecla and named Santa Tecla la Vella, or Old St. Tecla's, to distinguish it from the Cathedral of Santa Tecla, which was still under construction. The cemetery continued to grow, occupying a broad area to the northeast of the cathedral. In the modern era, a boundary wall was added around the cemetery. In 1809, it became necessary to build a new cemetery beyond the city walls. During the events of the Napoleonic invasion, Tarragona received many refugees from Barcelona. The typhus epidemic and considerable population growth brought an end to the use of the cathedral cemetery. The chapel of Santa Tecla took on funerary and liturgical functions. It may initially have been linked to the neighbouring Santa Tecla Hospital. In the contemporary era, it was converted into a lapidarium and then a store for the Tarragona Diocesan Museum. The chapel has a rectangular floor plan. The entrance is decorated in the style of a triumphal arch with a granite tympanum. Two sections of rib vault are held up by pillars and corbels, with laurel leaf capitals and plant-themed cimetière. The wall of the apse is decorated by two arches with checkered motifs. The sobriety of the architecture and the decoration denote the artistic influence of the Cistercian order, which had a strong presence in the area. In the 14th century, a taller chapel was added on the eastern side, making an L-shaped building. Over the years, the chapel was used to bury bishops, distinguished canons, and other important figures. In the year 1287, it became the final resting place of Archbishop Bernardo di Vella, who had been a close advisor to King James I of Aragon. From his tomb were recovered his mitre, a chalice, a paten, and his staff, among other pieces of his apparel, today in the care of the Diocesan Museum. Other figures laid to rest here include canons such as Bernat de Ribes, who died in 1320 and had been Archbishop Olivella's executor, and Canon Hospitaller Joan Ferrer de Busquets, who died in 1491 and whose casket still retains its polychrome. During the Peninsular War, the chapel was used to bury French soldiers who had died in the assault on Tarragona in 1811. The chapel presents us with a magnificent showcase of funerary art through the ages. A 16th century sepulchre, originating in the monastery of Cartoixa da Scaladell, reminds us of the meaning of death for Christians. The evangelists narrate how the disciples of Jesus, Joseph of Arimathea, Salome, John, Mary Magdalene, and Nicodemus, along with the Virgin Mary, placed the body of Christ in a new tomb, hewn from the rock. After 3 days, Jesus rose from the dead. For that reason, death, for Christians, is the door that unites the earthly life with the eternal. For centuries, in imitation of Christ, the faithful have been interred, and above their tombs epitaphs written and symbols sculpted to identify the deceased and to express their faith. Set in the facade of the cathedral, we find a sarcophagus dating from the end of the 4th century, known as the Bethesda. It may have been reused in the cathedral or in the cemetery during the Visigothic period. The scenes it depicts are inspired by the New Testament and express the prayer of the deceased. Lord, deliver my soul, as were delivered from their inflictions the blind, the bleeding woman, and the paralytic at the pool of Bethesda. Take pity on my soul, as you took pity on the tax collector Zacchaeus. And, as you entered triumphantly into the earthly city of Jerusalem, allow that I, your faithful servant, may enter the holy city of the heavenly Jerusalem. In the chapel, we can also admire a stridulated sarcophagus from the 4th century, which was found in the gardens of Santa Tecla, perhaps having been reused in the Visigothic or medieval periods. The canons inscribe their epitaphs on the walls or on marble plaques. The oldest gravestone is conserved next to the Corpus Christi Chapel. It belongs to Bernat de Torelló and dates from the year 1087. Another headstone, which has a Roman inscription, belongs to the canon Bernat de Comes, who died in 1446. In many parish cemeteries, graves were marked with disc-shaped stelae, such as these medieval examples originating in the town of Blancafort. Also in the medieval period, nobles and knights sculpted their portraits lying down, such as the Knight of the Queralt family of the 14th century. From the 16th century, we preserve 2 fine sepulchres. One is of the Archdeacon of St. Fructuosus, Joan de Soldevila, who died in 1502, and the other of the Canon Francesc Vives, who died in 1523, with a beautifully decorated urn, featuring a central cross flanked by coats of arms, with the motifs of a bell and the tau, the symbol of the Archdiocese of Tarragona. A burial in the floor, dated to 1686, demonstrated that the chapel was also used to inter laymen, such as the Tarragona house builder Isidro Torell and his family. The chapel also hosts the sepulchre of King James I of Aragon, which was located inside the cathedral. The remains of the king arrived at the cathedral in the year 1843 and lay there until 1952. When they were relocated definitively to the Royal Pantheon in Poblet. The most recent items of funerary art are found in these tombstones from the early 19th century, belonging to the last phase of the cemetery. The chapel also holds other interesting pieces, such as the bases of these wayside crosses from the towns of Vallmoll and Forès, both from the 14th century. The wayside cross from San Martí de Maldà from the 15th century, and the coats of arms and monumental inscription which adorned the facade of the University of Tarragona, founded in 1572. This was located on what is now the Rambla Vella, and was founded by Cardinal Gaspar de Cervantes, a relative of the celebrated writer Miguel de Cervantes. In the garden, we can also admire the wayside cross of Tamarit from the 16th century. And the monument raised in 1913 to commemorate the 16th centenary of the Edict of Milan in 313, by which the Emperor Constantine permitted Christianity within the Roman Empire. The monument was originally crowned by a cross, which is now lost. The Chapel of Santa Tecla and its cemetery today form a space where spirituality, nature, and the weight of more than 2,000 years of history transport the visitor to the world of transcendence.